You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey all, welcome back to episode 57 of Cards to the Moon, and it is another Friday episode. I'm Clark from 5 Card Guys on Instagram, and with me, as usual, is John, who is Trade You at Recess. But missing in action today is Hyung this week, who is busy getting his new office space ready, which is exciting for us because a part of that space is where we'll be meeting in the future to discuss more content ideas for the podcast, as well as coming up with more ways to engage with our audience. So we'll be running the next couple of shows without Hyung, but today in his place, we have a special guest coming on a bit later in this episode. His name's Alex, aka Refractor Jones on Instagram. And if you look at his profile, he's got a pretty extensive collection. He's been in the hobby for a while now, having used to work at Becket. So that's something we can ask him about in our upcoming interview. But off the top, just like last week when we talked about NBA players we're looking to target in the offseason as more teams get eliminated in the playoffs, I just want to look into the NHL playoffs this time and see if there's anyone we're looking to pick up. John, you're our resident hockey guy on this podcast. So why don't you start with a couple of players that have impressed you so far in this playoffs and who you're personally targeting?
So as painful as it is, and I don't really want to talk about the Leafs, but the silver lining, and anybody that's not a Leaf fan, all the folks, all the rest of the Canadians out there, they're probably just laughing at us right now. But the silver lining is that it's quite possible Austin Matthews cards might take a bit of a dip as we head into the off season. Especially, I'm sure Maple Leaf fans were probably holding on to their Austin Matthews cards, but those outside of the city might start to think, I don't know, as good as this guy is, he's not a winner. Like, their Leafs are proving that they can't win. So I think maybe that thought process will bring down Matthews cards a bit more than expected. I don't own any Matthews cards, and the thought process that I've really been thinking before I mentioned the whole like Ovi versus Sid comparison and how it moved in the future based on goal scoring. I don't know, it really has me thinking maybe I want to try and attack some Austin Matthews. So that's one I'm thinking of. Maybe it's a bit of a homer bias, but he's certainly one. Of some of the eliminated teams, I mentioned before, for me, it's the Panthers, man. I think Future Watch Huberdeau, Future Watch Barkov. For me, Barkov especially, I am keeping a keen eye on that one as we head into the card show in a couple of weeks. If that card is around and it's got a pretty good price, I'm going to hope to kind of trade into it. But the Panthers have two pretty good players that I'm keeping my eye out on.
Getting swept by the Lightning doesn't sway your decision?
It doesn't, but
okay.
That again, this is silver lining, right? Like, I think when you believe in a certain player or when you believe in a certain thought process, performance in the playoffs shouldn't dictate. And actually, this should be a good thing for those that have been trying to go after these players, is that their card might go down more than expected. So for me, I'm chomping at the bit. Like, that's great for me.
Okay. Yeah, a couple of guys for me. Stamkos, I don't know. I think I have a personal bias for Stamkos. He used to be a 50, 60 goal scorer, right? And his team's still going strong. And every time I watch the Leafs Lightning series, and Stamkos is always in there making moves, and he's still with it. So, right. And I looked at this BGS 9510 Future Watch card. It's going for $650. So I feel like that's a good price,
right?
Rangers, who knows? Like, I thought they would be out by now, but they somehow came back and beat the Penguins.
Yeah.
So here we are, and now they're, as of this recording, they're down 2-1 against the Hurricanes. So I'm not counting them out again. Anything could happen. But if the Rangers are eliminated, our boy Panarin, we both love him. He could be a good guy to target.
For sure.
And I'm going to throw this out there. This is a no-brainer, of course, by saying McDavid. But if you look at his playoff performance, he is like took the next level. Everyone is talking about, like, if you weren't talking about him already, you're talking about him now, right? And I don't know, like, there's going to be a point where he's just, for a lot of people, he's already out of reach in terms of card value. But if he takes another jump, that's going to, if I can somehow consolidate my best cards and trade up for McDavid, I might try to do that this year before he goes up even further.
For those that don't know what we're talking about, just tune in to the next Edmonton Oilers game and watch McDavid. He is on a mission, man. If you guys watch, like, when we watched the Leafs fall to Tampa Bay on that same evening, was it that evening? Anyways, I watched, maybe it was the next evening. I watched Game 7. No, sorry. Was it who did they play? They played the Kings, right? McDavid?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I ended up watching that game. It was late into the night. And man, that kid put on a show. And it wasn't just about being flashy. He was utterly dominant every time he came on the ice. And this is the difference when you watch hockey players, when we're talking generational hockey players like Sid Crosby, McDavid, you notice them every shift. As much as some players are superstars, sure, they disappear here and there on certain shifts. But guys like Crosby, guys like McDavid, they're called generational for a reason, because literally the moment they step on the ice, you notice them back checking, you notice them pick up the puck, you notice them make a play, being dangerous in the offense, whatever you want to call it. So he is proving to the world right now that he is truly generational. Already on TSN, which is like the Canadian ESPN, there's already some guy writing an article about McDavid being the greatest ever already. A bit of a hot take. Okay. A bit of a hot take, but that's the kind of impression the kid is making on everybody, sure, right? So
yeah, it's a hot take, but I mean, another podcast I was listening to, someone asked the question, when you look at McDavid's playoff performance and just the way he's played so far in his career, who else can you compare him to? And everyone's like, Gretzky, Lemieux, and then that's it. Like, he's already in that conversation. Right. If he's not there, he's like top 3 already in terms of just the impression that he's made on hockey analysts and just hockey fans in general. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll see how the rest of the NHL playoffs plays out and what the offseason does to some of these hockey card values. All right, without further ado, let's go to our interview with our special guest today, Refractor Jones. Okay, it's our pleasure to welcome Alex to the podcast, aka Refractor Jones on Instagram, with more than 11,000 followers. And if you read his bio, he's been in the hobby dating back to 1979, and he's grown a particular fondness for refractors, as his name suggests, and also inserts from the 1990s. Just take a look at his IG page and you'll see how impressive his collection is. He also used to work as a regional basketball analyst for Becket, so we'll ask him about that and what that involves. But before we do, Alex, thanks for coming on to our show.
Thank you for having me, guys.
With our guests, we always like to start from the beginning. When did you actually start collecting, and what got you hooked in the hobby? Any particular player, or was there a card or a set that got you in?
No, for me, it was my grandmother. My grandmother's the one who was a big influence in my life. So in 1979, of course, and I'm going to predate myself again, I really didn't know what a baseball card was. And she took me to a downtown Fullerton baseball card store and introduced me to that shiny cardboard that we all love today.
So that's how you got started. Your bio also mentions that you were a former regional basketball analyst for Becket. So just curious, what did you do exactly in that role?
Well, basically, I worked for free for Dr. Becket for quite a few years. Okay. is what it turned out to be. At the time, back in 1990, it's when the first release of the Basketball Becket magazine came out. We really didn't have basketball guys at Becket. There was more baseball guys and more football guys, of course. So basketball wasn't a very sought after sport as far as card collecting. And of course I loved basketball. I mean, I always loved basketball because Lakers were my favorite team growing up, Showtime. And so for me, it was just easy because I was always involved in basketball. I was always around it, even though I never played it, but I just loved watching the game. So, Showtime and Jordan were always my guys. So
Yeah.
for me, it was real easy to fall into that. And basically I got pretty lucky because of course I had the knowledge of the refractors and all also. So, and that came a few years later, of course, in 93 when they all came out.
Okay, cool. So did you actually write for the magazine at the time, or?
No, what I did was, being an analyst, we would go collect data. So we would go to basic card shows, and of course the internet wasn't the internet. So the only way for us to find out what items we're selling for was traveling the country and going to shows.
Wow.
And at that time, the market is nothing like what it is today. I mean, everybody was selling at 50% of whatever the Becket was priced out at.
Right.
And so Becket was really just kind of a little leverage tool for you to, kind of a guide for you to follow. But it was pretty norm that it was 50% straight across the board. So when the numbers were all gathered up, as far as Becket was concerned, they kind of sometimes had to inflate the numbers a little bit higher than they were. And that's when you would see the up arrows or the down arrows in the magazine. And of course, everybody always waited, patiently for that every month.
Yeah, I totally remember that. That was the sports card Bible at the time, right?
Right. Wait a minute. So you were the one that came up with the pricing for basketball Becket?
Well, myself and there was a team of 4 or 5 guys, but the majority of the data that was collected were by us that would travel around to shows. Becket would also contact hobby shops as well, and would ask them and say, hey, what do you feel is selling in the basketball market? And they would collect that data as well. They would all go to Dallas and they would put it all together and it would get thrown into the magazine.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
my mind is blown right now.
Mine
I was
too.
always wondering how Becket came up with their pricing, and we just got our answer. That's incredible.
It was really a team effort. It wasn't done by just one person. There's no way that it could have been done by one person. It truly had to be, it was the only way to organize it and collect data, was to be able to pick up that phone and call hobby shops or travel to shows, and find out what is actually selling and what's hot and what's not. And I'm sure you remember that in the magazine as well.
Right. Oh my gosh.
That's crazy. No, I'm glad we got that insight from you. I wish I knew that when I was a kid, because I had no idea how that works. I just want to go back to what you said earlier about how you got into the hobby and how you're just kind of really attracted to the refractor cards, the shiny cardboard, as you said. What is it about the refractor cards or the refractor parallels that really got your attention? And when did you decide that's what you wanted to really focus on collecting in the hobby?
Well, truthfully, I really shouldn't just say that I'm exclusively a refractor collector, because I know we had to kind of postpone this whole interview here a week because I was, of course, traveling the country buying collections, and I'm a card hoarder. I'm terrible in the worst way. Like in one of my card rooms, I probably have at least 500 plus wax boxes just sitting sitting here, and it's just terrible because the amount of stuff that I just brought in. I brought a 26-foot U-Haul, and I had it. It took me 3 days to unload it, and of course I broke it all down. It took me about a week, and got what I wanted out of it. The rest, I put it together, and we send it to Make-A-Wish, and we'll do Ronald McDonald House, and I also do some things with local children's hospital. And
cool.
Package cards together and give them away to kids and stuff. But I'm not exclusively refractors. I love refractors, of course. I have a little bit over 250,000. So for me, I don't care whether it's a common refractor or a star refractor, just because I enjoy building the actual sets. So.
Yeah. Well, I was going to save that question until the end, but you just mentioned you came back on a road trip, I guess, and you came back with a big haul. What kind of cards did you come back with?
I'm really from about the late 60s all the way to about 2015.
Okay.
And it was all primarily just Facebook marketplace ads that, and initially what I did was I had a collection contact that was out in Florida. So I had to go out to Florida, and I went out there, and what I did was once I got out there, I rented a U-Haul from there and then drove back across the country, back to Vegas. And I just hit, every state along the way, jumping on Facebook marketplace and then just buying as much as I could.
That's yeah. That sounds like a quite the road trip. Is it to complete some of your sets that you're talking about? Is that what you're trying to do?
No, for me, like I just said, I'm a cardboard hoarder. I honest to God, when I tell you, we really need to do a video someday, and just to show you the amount of just quantity of cardboard that I have. But I have 4 rooms in my home. So I ended up moving to my new home. I sold a 2,000 square foot home to move into a 3,500 square foot home.
Wow.
So I can just accommodate my sports cards. And it's crazy. I don't sell. At one time I used to sell. When I was a Becket regional analyst, I had my own store, and it was Jordan's Field of Dreams. And I did sell cards at that time. But as I got older, I just didn't want to sell cards. I just wanted to keep cards. And cards for me are enjoyment, and it's my getaway from real life.
Yeah, no, you're definitely a true collector for sure. Now, you raise an interesting point. These days, a lot of collectors don't really set builds because, there are so many cards issued with multiple variations, especially in these newer sets. But correct me if I'm wrong, Alex. I feel like it was more doable with older sets that had like a defined number of cards in the set with a decent size checklist. I'm just curious, what is it about completing a set that you enjoy, that process, and do you ever get frustrated if there are some cards that seem impossible to find, or do you like that challenge?
Yeah, as far as the refractors, there are definitely sets out there that just crush me and kill me. My favorite, of course, is the '93, finest basketball refractor set. I've built 15 of those sets, and I'm working on 3 graded sets right now. One from SGC, one from PSA, and one from Becket. So it's like I'm getting bored now building the actual sets. So I said, well, no, I'm going to just grade them and grade some out, and then start building them in graded form now. But
Right.
I'm really not getting bored. Truthfully, I love them. If you look at my Instagram, you'll see that I'm constantly buying. I was at Burbank Sports Cards a few months ago, and it's about 4 or 5 months ago, and I bought. Rob sold me 20,000 refractors. I went out there. Wow. So, yeah, for me, every time I hit the national, I usually, because I've been to 20 plus nationals now. So I've been all the way back from, in the 80s in Anaheim. What I'll do is I'll fly in or wherever I'm going, and then I'll just pallet stuff up and ship it all back home. And then when I get home, I've got my goodies waiting for me to play with.
I like that. Well, what are you going to do when you run out of room? I'm just curious. Move to a bigger place, right?
I'm going to buy a bigger house. I mean, that's what I did. I'm telling you, I went from 1,900 square feet to 3,500 square feet now, and that's my main house. And then I have 2 casitas in the back that I'm also converting and working on right now. And I said, well, maybe I can turn those into card rooms also.
Yeah,
because I truly do have more than just sports cards, because when I used to work as a clubhouse manager in professional baseball. Okay. At the AAA level, with the San Diego Padres and stuff here in Vegas.
Cool.
And I have easily 500 plus game worn uniforms. I mean, I just have just a ton of stuff. But of course, I don't sell any of that stuff. All these guys, they have meaning to me, and all these things. So, but I would love to be able to display all these uniforms. But my favorite game use uniform I have an '86 Magic Johnson game worn road.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But that's my favorite piece.
Okay.
Wow.
If you could see me, my jaw's floored. It just I didn't know that was the extent of your collection.
I'm truly not just refractors. I mean, not at all.
Right.
I'm truly, I'm very private, with my collection. I don't do a lot of, podcasts and I don't do a lot of stuff because I'm not one of those rah kind of guys and say,
Sure,
look
sure.
at me and that type of stuff. Because truthfully, if you're telling me that you're looking for a card, and many people can attest to this, and they can say, "Hey, Alex, I'm looking for this." If I have multiples of it, it's in the mail and I've sent it to you. It's
That's
just
great.
what I do. It's what the hobby's about. And it's so when, of course, being that I can't take them all with me, someday when I'm no longer around, my kids will have to decide what they're going to do with all this stuff. But my collection will always live on in somebody else's collection, the way I look at it. So that's why I always try to make sure that I gift, to others to keep the hobby strong.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And like I think I read on one of your Instagram posts that you were planning to post a new refractor each day. I was wondering how you would do that, but now it makes total sense. You don't have you have plenty to do that with.
Yeah, I've got for like the next 20 years easy. So I mean, it's not going to be anytime soon that I'm going to run out.
Sure. John, you had a couple questions, right?
Yeah, Alex, I'm dating myself as well, but I've talked about this on the podcast many times. I collected 95 and 96 and 97 finest basketball.
Okay.
It was a wonderful time. I was a teenager. Started collecting. When did I start collecting? Like around 89. Obviously, I started around when kind of my age group got into it after the Ken Griffey 89 Upper Deck.
Right.
And then most of my friends, started to kind of spill away in like 93. And I kept going pretty strong. And I got into finest. And that's why I appreciate looking at your IG account. Is like this is the memory that I had, like purchasing hobby boxes, ripping it, I'm pretty sure, and you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 2 refractors per box.
On some of the basketball, it was 2, but there was regional boxes also for the 93 finest. People didn't know this. There's regional short print refractors and there's regular short print refractors, and then of course there's the SSPs. The real super short print refractors. But it was falling anywhere from 2 to 6 to the jumbos were sometimes anywhere from 8 to 10.
Right. Yeah, so 93 I was still collecting Upper Deck, and I didn't realize finest was a thing until about 95. And I think at that time here in Canada it was about $15 to $20 a pack. And going from packs that cost like $1 to $2 to like 20, 15, 20, it really blew my mind. Like it opened my eyes to this whole new world of high-end card sets, and I was hooked right away. Obviously, I couldn't collect for too long because as a teenager, you only have so much money to be purchasing, hobby boxes of like 96, 97. But anyways, getting to the question, I'm really curious just looking at your Instagram account, what is like your most prized sports card? And it doesn't have to be value. It could be maybe like a great PC or a good story behind it. Either a prize card or like your best or your favorite refractor card.
Well, for me, it's just my first baseball card that I ever owned, and that's the 1971 Topps Pete Rose, and it stays on right on my screening table. It's big deal. It's a $50-$60 card, just in raw form. But to me, and I still have that card.
Sure.
There's you couldn't pry that card out of my hand. Yeah, there's no amount of money that would take, because as soon as I give up that card, I've officially given up a piece of me that no longer exists, and that's that right there is my pure childhood, and every time that I look at that card on here on my table, it just takes me back to 1979 when I was fortunate enough to be gifted that card by a sports card store owner.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I can appreciate that thought process. I one of my greatest chases was the 96 Kobe Topps Finest, and If anybody knows me on this podcast, I'm a very finicky collector. I'm not as much of a purist as Alex. And I love my perfect 10s. You know, like a PSA 9 bothers me a lot. But with that Kobe, I ended up getting it graded, and it got a PSA 9. And normally that would really, really bother me. But because that was the card that I pulled, that I chased back in 96, I love it. And it's a card that I would never sell. It's a card that it's going to be in my collection for forever. So I can appreciate what you're saying there, Alex.
Yeah,
Totally
I'm, truly my most valuable card is probably my Satchel Paige rookie that I have. I don't have the Leaf. I have the regular, and I would love to have the 48 Leaf Satchel, and that's my grail card that I don't have in my collection. I have a 52 Mano, and it's PSA 5.
Wow.
So I mean, my stuff, and I don't know if you guys were familiar with Al Rosen, Mr. Mint at all, but Mr. Mint used to travel the country, and he would buy up everything vintage, and he would just accumulate everything. If you guys ever get a chance, and even the listeners, just go on YouTube and just punch in, Al Rosen, Mr. Mint, and look at some of the videos of the stuff that this man was able to acquire over the years. I know a lot of people didn't care for him, but as a kid, I mean, he was always kind to me. He'd always say, "Hey, what do you got, kid?" I'd walk up to the table and I'd show him. He goes, "Yep, you got junk." So, I mean, he was one of those purists. He was just one of those guys that was up front and didn't beat around the bush. But
told you straight.
Sure. Yeah.
I was also going to ask, and you kind of half answered my question earlier when you were talking, because when I look at your Instagram account, obviously some of your older posts, I see some graded cards, but most of your newer posts, there aren't many graded cards. So how do you feel? I know you're starting to submit to get some of your sets graded. How do you feel about graded? Do you collect graded, or are you, either way? Is it raw graded? How do you feel about both?
You know what? For me, it's a double-edged sword. Of course I want to preserve my stuff, and just like everyone else, truthfully for me, it's not about the grade. It never was, because I've always been a collector true at heart. Even though I was on the other side of the table at one time, because I didn't want to work for a living. I was like, well, no, I don't want to go work for a living. I'd rather play with cardboard all the time. So I opened up the store, and I did that for a few years, and then found out that traveling and doing everything was just not real conducive to having a store. So, I ended up giving up the store, and I kept doing the show circuit, and just kept traveling around and buying and flipping and playing and doing that kind of stuff. But grading for me, truthfully, it's about preservation more than anything. And I have a 5-year rule as far as grading. So, a lot of people now, of course, they're gonna jump on something, 2022 item, and they're gonna grade it right away and try to cash out. But for me, the money's always been there in the hobby. It's never gone away. And the way I put a grasp on all this, I don't grade anything out for 5 years. So if the item comes out in 2022, I'm not going to grade it out until 2027. And and my 5-year rule is the reason why I do this. I'm able to buy more of those cards, because if I truly believe in that so-called player or set or whatever that I'm buying, I'm able to buy more of that stuff, and I could just sock it away, and I play the game. So
that makes sense. Yeah. Like I said earlier, like, you're probably one of the truer collectors that we've talked to on the show, and because a lot of times it is about investing in cards and flipping. Just want to get your thoughts on the hobby and how that's kind of I don't know, it's kind of changed in that sense, where there's a lot more investors coming into this space. Do you feel one way or another about that?
I'm not one of those people that wants to poo-poo on anyone that wants to come into this hobby, because anyone that comes into this hobby means it's more eyes, it's more opportunities, for you to acquire other things.
Sure.
And I know a lot of people get upset, that they say, oh, well, you're paying X amount of dollars for this box to open this. you don't have to open up a box of cards to be happy. You can go to a show. You can live in a $1 box. You can live in a 50-cent box and pull out some great stuff. There's plenty of 50-cent boxes at the National. And I can attest to this, that there's cards that are 20, 30, 40, $50 cards that are just dumped in there. The guys buy multiple, collections, and they just want to liquidate the stuff. So, if you were a bargain bin box hunter, you could do fantastic. But I'm not opposed to, all the new money that's coming in. What I'm opposed to is people, doing the ultra hype, or trying to push anything on you, saying, you should collect this, Clark, or you should collect this. Right. You collect what you want to collect. Enjoy the hobby. That's why you're in the hobby, first and foremost. I mean, at least for me.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you say that. We always say on this show, collect what you love first and foremost. And then, if the value decreases, you still love the player. So it's a win-win in that case, right?
Yeah. Let me tell you a little story. I don't mean to interrupt you here, but I'm not a LeBron guy. I don't like LeBron.
Just like John.
Amen, brother. Amen.
I'm not. But did I capitalize on LeBron stuff? Yep. Did I sell his gold refractors, his rookie refractors, and his blacks? Yes, I did. And you know what? And you know what I turned that money into? I bought homes with that money. So he may not be my favorite guy, but when I ended up selling those, I paid cash for homes because of those cards. Yeah. So and at the time I bought those cards for under a couple $100 when they first came out.
Crazy.
Wow. Yeah. So if people stay in this hobby just for the long term and always make it a long play, that's the way I look at it. You're always going to come out on top. Always.
Yeah.
Right. Good advice. Are you doing this full time right now? I know you go on road trips, but is the hobby able to sustain what you're doing right now?
Yeah, because I'm a liquidator by trade. So when a bank calls me, or they say, hey, look, we have a home, we have this business that needs to be liquidated, I go in, do the evaluation, put a number on it, and then I move on, which is great because it allows me to travel the country and go out and see what's out there.
That's awesome.
Makes sense.
John, any last questions from you?
Alex, do you seeing that you used to sell, do you have any cards or a particular card that you regret selling that you may have not been able to get back?
You're gonna kill me with this one. Yeah, I've got some cards that absolutely haunt me, and they're 52, 53, 54 were Redmans, so the Redman series, they had little tabs on them. I had probably easily about 1,000 of them that I ended up picking up at an antique store in Pennsylvania. And I bought them back, probably in mid 2000, like 2003, 2004, right around when, LeBron came out. And I found these, and they were $1 a piece. The lady goes, I'll sell you these for $1 a piece. And truly at that time, most of the guys like Ted Williams, he was booking at like $75 to $100. It wasn't a big deal.
Okay.
But I had multiples. I had anywhere from like 7 to 8 Ted Williams. Willie Mays, there was 12. And I can remember the number because those are the things that I just absolutely regret. That those are the only things that didn't stay in my collection, and I should have, and that's why I am what I am now, because cold day and HWE hockey sticks before you're going to get anything out of me, because I'm not going to lose something ever again and regret it for the rest of my life. So of course, me losing all those tobacco Redmonds, it just crushed me.
Right. Sorry I brought that up.
Reliving a painful memory.
Yeah, and I try to find them now, and you can't. You'll find them without the tabs, and of course any of the nice ones have already been graded, and they're already 4 figures and above. When they're out there, so it's like, forget it. I had just an amazing amount of them, and I got lucky, and I shouldn't have done what I did. I got greedy, and of course it was it was because I could make money on them, and being a a young dad and having kids, I was like, well, let me turn over some of that money. I got to make sure everyone else eats here, because if not, everyone's going to start eating cardboard.
Right. We get it for sure. Alex, we really appreciate your time. Before you leave, we always like to do a lightning round, if that's okay with you. Just want to get to know a little bit more about you as a collector. All right, so the first one, favorite PC card at the moment. I know you have a lot to choose from, so I know this one's a little bit harder.
How about I just go with my favorite set, my 93 finest refractors, my 93 finest refractor sets, 15 and counting.
Okay.
Good choice. Wow.
Well, that was my next question. Favorite sports card refractor set. I believe on your Instagram you said 93, 94 basketball. Is that right? Finest?
That is, yep.
What is it about that set? Just curious that you particularly like.
Well, because it was the first of course, being, the first release of finest. But more importantly, because they weren't labeled as refractors, people had no idea that they had refractors. So when I was out and buying stuff, because you got to remember, when baseball fell, it was one per box for 93 baseball. So, and again, people didn't really care too much about basketball. Everybody was like, it's basketball's basketball. Jordan's the only guy.
Yeah.
So you could buy them at shows for nothing. I was buying them, for a quarter, 50 cents, dime. They were in dime boxes.
Crazy.
I was getting stuff like that. I can remember buying Jordans for $50 to $75.
No way.
A refractor. Yeah. But people didn't know there was a refractor, of course, because they weren't labeled.
Right.
They were like, "Oh, look, this is a shiny finest card. It's Jordan's first shiny finest card, $50." Okay, I'm paying $50.
Okay.
What year is 93? Is that the Chris Webber penny year?
Yep, Chris Webber and Penny Hardaway. Chris Webber was number 212, and Penny Hardaway went 189.
There you go.
I wish I knew about finest, and I think I was collecting Stadium Club
at the time.
Well, you got out cheap, because finest was ridiculous. It was that big first $100 plus box on the market, before Upper Deck, with 89 Griffey, being the big chase that turned into a $75 box at the time. But the true first $100 box was Topps Finest.
Wow. Okay. Underrated card that you feel deserves more love from the hobby or set?
That's a good question. I'm going to go with being the most underrated for me is what you see as in value in your collection, because a lot of people put, the value of their collection being X amount of dollars. And it's not, it's truly not. It's not about those dollars. It's about the time and the pleasure that the cards give you, and you're able to connect with other guys, and sometimes even, try to pull your family into it. I tried to pull my daughters into it. They didn't want any part of it, but
Fair enough.
Oh, good answer.
Your thoughts on the future of the hobby?
I'm not a poo-poo guy, so I'm kind of one of those guys that will sit on the fence and watch what everybody else is doing, and then go from there. But the future of the hobby is strong if you're getting into it for the right reasons. If you're getting into it because you want to cash in, then don't even get into the hobby, truly, because you're not going to make money. If you're thinking you're going to make money, you better have six figures is sitting behind you to make money. Get into this hobby and enjoy it, and truly the money will come along the way. It always does. You can't lose.
Yeah, that's good advice too. And lastly for us, we're actually based out of Toronto, Canada. Just want to ask you, any Raptors that you particularly like?
Yeah, no, my favorite, Toronto Raptor, truthfully, was Tracy McGrady.
T-Mac, okay.
Tracy McGrady, 97 finest. All right.
Yeah. T-Mac was my favorite guy. I love all those guys that come straight out of high school. I was one of those guys that just always bought into those guys.
You're a VC guy, eh?
You know what? I'm okay with Vince Carter, but poor Vince, man, he stayed in the league too long.
Yeah.
I mean, he just, and who's to blame him? And he stayed because he loved the game. So he did it for the right reason.
Right.
But he could dunk.
Oh, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Highlight reels for days, for sure. Alex, again, we really appreciate your time. Love your collection. Love your heart for the hobby. And we definitely learned a lot of things from just your perspective as a true collector. So again, Alex, thanks so much, and hope to connect soon with you.
Thank you for inviting me. That stuff, and I really don't do a lot of interview and for me, the hobby is a hobby first. And again, the money always comes later on. You're not going to miss. Just keep throwing that dart on that board. You'll hit. Again, for me, the hobby has never been a money thing. So I want to stress, just get this out to people to understand. Enjoy the hobby. The hobby will bring you friends. The hobby will give you pleasure. But the hobby will also open other doors for you, because many people don't actually recognize that there are closet collectors out there. We used to all be nerds for collecting a piece of cardboard.
Right.
We're no longer nerds.
That's true.
That's debatable, probably, but
I'm not going to admit it.
All right, thanks again. And for all those listening, you could check out Alex's Instagram page. It's at Refractor Jones, all one word. And you'll be impressed with his collection, and can't wait to see what other cards you have just in your boxes. And good luck with organizing everything.
Yeah, I'll need it. You guys don't want to come down and help, do you?
Well, when we're in Vegas next time, maybe we'll drop by.
Well,
just
absolutely.
To see it.
The next time you guys are in Vegas, absolutely, you can come over and check out the hoard and
nice.
help me do some sorting.
We definitely will.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, thank you guys.
Okay, another big thanks to Alex, aka Refractor Jones, who provided some great insight in how the hobby has evolved over the past couple decades, and we look forward to connecting with him again in the near future. Alright, that actually wraps up our Friday show. Hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Once again, we appreciate y'all subscribing to our podcast and giving us 5 stars. It will definitely help us out a lot. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back with a new show on Tuesday. See you later. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.